immense mountains of the Himalayas never forgive. On the border between earth and sky, this mountain range stretches like an endless wall, with peaks exceeding 8,000 meters in height, forming the highest and youngest natural barrier on the planet. The air, thin and sharp, forces its creatures to breathe slowly, as if each breath had to be rationed to survive. The climate is constantly harsh. The cold penetrates to the bone, the wind cuts the skin, and the snow doesn't fall in soft flakes. It descends as a solid mass carried by the wind and piles up on the slopes. The sun doesn't just warm, it bounces raw off the sharp edges of grey rock. And yet at these impossible heights, life finds its way. On impossible ledges, the ibex climbs with ancestral poise, as if the rock recognized its passage. The Tibetan fox, for its part, glides through the snow and rocks with absolute stealth. Its broad, flat face seems sculpted by the wind and the need to go unnoticed. From the thicket, the red panda watches cautiously, its rounded face and small ears speaking of shelter, shade, and seclusion. The peregrine falcon dominates the skies with lethal precision, deploying razor-sharp wings that tear through the air and its prey. Its attack is a war machine, a storm of claws and speed designed to bring down even much larger prey, tearing at their wings to ensure they cannot escape. And beyond the forests, the golden take-in advances with the slowness of the ancient, covered in thick fur that shines like copper in the white light of the plateau. They are minimal presences in an immense world, creatures shaped by altitude, silence, and scarcity. And their faces tell the entire story of adaptation. It is at those heights where everything fades away: sound, vegetation, and heat. There is life hidden among shadows and cliffs. A silhouette that lurks with the patience of a ghost. It leaves no clear trail. It never lets itself be seen twice. It inhabits the slopes like a shadow that doesn't fear the altitude. There, where life seems a rarity, the snow leopard hunts. No one sees it coming. There's no stampede when it approaches. It doesn't roar. It doesn't run violently. Its hunt is more like a whisper among rocks. While other species survive despite their environment, he adapts so perfectly that he seems to have been created for these mountains. It moves with silent precision, gliding along narrow ledges, skirting abysses, without breaking the harmony of the landscape. His prey rarely detects him before the final leap. It hunts at dawn or in the last hours of the day. Its hunting pattern is crepuscular, secretive, and stealthy. It pursues baral, Siberian ibex, argali, and smaller mammals such as marmots. But even in this terrain, success is not constant. Hunting in these mountains depends not only on strength or stealth, but on endurance. Finding prey requires traveling miles through cliffs, slopes, and valleys, hoping for a trail that doesn't always lead to something living. Hunger accompanies him with every step, squeezing his body from within even when everything around him remains motionless. On average, a snow leopard needs between 3 and 5 kilograms of meat per day to sustain its metabolism. This amount can mean hunting a large prey item every 1 or 2 weeks, accompanied by entire days without food. Because there is no abundance in this ecosystem. Everything is scarce, scattered, elusive. That's why every part of your body has been sculpted to optimize energy and precision. Its wide, thickly furred paws act as natural snowshoes, keeping it on the deep snow. The plantar pads are covered by a layer of thick fur that protects them from direct contact with the ice. But what is most striking of all its anatomical attributes are its eyes. Unlike other big cats, the snow leopard's eyes have a slightly rounder opening, with pale irises and a forward orientation that gives it magnified binocular vision. They are not eyes designed to be dazzled by the sun, like a lion's, but rather to interpret the smallest nuances of movement in a static, uniform white environment. This shape and location are believed to allow it to more effectively capture moving silhouettes at great distances, even in diffuse lighting conditions. An adaptation to snow, reflections, and the boundless horizon. But it's not just its eyes that inspire wonder. Every part of its body seems designed to withstand the improbable. Its long, dense, and flexible tail is much more than a means of balance in motion. It's a thermal tool, a counterweight on the slope, a coat that envelops it when it rests on the snow. In some adult specimens, it can exceed 1 meter in length and represents almost the entire body. It uses it as a counterweight in its acrobatic leaps between the boulders, but also as a shelter. During rest, it often curls up and covers its face with its tail, protecting the most exposed areas from the freezing air, as everything about it is designed to withstand the extreme cold of the Himalayas. This thermal adaptation doesn't end with the tail. It envelops the entire body. Its winter fur, one of the densest among felines, can reach up to 5 centimeters in thickness. Their fur forms 2 layers: a dense undercoat that traps heat like an invisible blanket, and a long, oily outer coat that repels moisture, preventing melting snow or icy wind from penetrating the skin. This coat protects you from the intense cold and at the same time envelops you in a perfect disguise. Its light grey colour with rounded and diffuse spots allows it to blend in with the shadows cast by the snow and rock. It doesn't shine, it doesn't stand out. It simply blends into its surroundings. The temperature in its habitat can drop to minus 30 degrees Celsius, yet it remains active, even during snowstorms. Its body isn't simply adapted, it's synchronized with the altitude. But the deeper question isn't how he survives, though that's important. The real question is why, of all places, he chose the Himalayas to permanently inhabit. Unlike other big cats that thrived in warm plains or dense forests, the snow leopard migrated into the inhospitable. Its evolutionary origin dates back to the highlands of the Tibetan Plateau more than 1 million years ago, when some lineages moved from Central Asia following the expansion of cold zones during the Ice Age. While others settled in more temperate regions, this specific branch went deep into the mountain ranges. He did it not for comfort, but to avoid competition. There are no tigers, lions, or hyenas here. There's space, there's small prey, but abundant in certain seasons. And above all, there is silence. This geographic isolation consolidated its specificity. But over time, it lost its ability to thrive in warm environments. Their fur, metabolic rate, and prey type are embedded in an ecological network that only exists at extreme altitudes. It moves freely between 3,000 and 5,500 meters above sea level, adapted to the lack of oxygen that prevails at these heights. It walks slowly, stops, and observes. Its heart beats slower than that of other big cats, and its blood transports oxygen more efficiently. He doesn't descend. He doesn't descend into the valleys. He doesn't seek other territories because he doesn't need them. Every step he takes between the crevices and the cliffs is not just territorial, it's a gesture of permanence. Here he was formed. Here he was perfected. But even in his own habitat, he avoids being seen, not out of fear, but out of strategy. It's a profoundly elusive animal. Its camouflage, its slow pace, and its cautious behavior make it almost invisible to the human eye. Even shepherds who live in mountainous regions rarely see it more than once a year. Avoid humans, but also wild dogs and other species that could endanger their offspring. He's a patient predator, but also a wary one. This combination of power and prudence has made him almost mythical in these lands. At the edge of the Himalayas, where everything slows down, the cycle of life also regulates itself slowly. The female snow leopard does not breed frequently. Unlike other felines whose fertility is driven by seasonal abundance, she must measure each pregnancy as a long-term bet. The young are born in spring, at the end of the harshest winter, when the thaw begins to reveal the valleys and the first prey becomes accessible. The female, who has gestated silently for 100 days, chooses deep crevices in the rocks, hidden shelters between the stone and snow where the wind cannot reach. There, in total darkness, between 1 and 3 babies are born, blind, deaf, and covered with a woolly fur that already foreshadows isolation. For the first few weeks, she stays close. She nurses, cleans, and regulates her baby's temperature with her own body. There is no help. There is no protective male. As with most big cats, including the tiger, its closest genetic relative, the female breeds alone. But unlike the tiger, which often leaves its cubs for hours in search of food, the leopard stays close. She moves little, risking only the bare minimum. Her caution, which in adulthood is a strategy, becomes a sacrifice in motherhood. And yet not all felines act the same. Lionesses breed in groups. Female jaguars, like tigers, wander off without looking back. Panthers may abandon a litter if game is scarce, but the Himalayan female spends more time with her young than most of her peers. She stays with her cubs for over 22 months, guiding them along trails, teaching them how to stalk, and slowly escorting them through ravines to find real prey. Everything they know, they learn at your side, without signs, without words, just silent observation and repetition. This prolonged dedication is not a coincidence. It is the result of long-standing evolutionary pressure that favored persistent mothers, those capable of transmitting skills with clarity and consistency. In an environment where prey is scarce and difficult to capture, only those pups that learn with patience and precision survive. Every lesson is vital, from reading shadows and relief to perfecting the technique of stalking among snow and rocks. Without this careful instruction, the chances of survival decrease drastically. This difference in maternal bonding may be reflected in the very structure of the snow leopard's face. Unlike other felines with harsh, menacing features, its face conveys an unexpected softness, as if its expression hinted at calm, even patience, in contrast to its hunting habits. It's not just a matter of aesthetics. That shape may reflect a prolonged life with the young. Their cubs, when they begin to move, stay close to rocky terrain. They play cautiously, they explore without straying too far. The mother lets them advance, but she watches. The training is progressive. They learn to hunt, to read the terrain, to calculate distance. But they also understand that showing oneself is failure. Survival begins long before the jump. It begins with the art of not being seen. At 1.5 years old, most males begin to become independent. Some stay a little longer until the female goes into heat again, so distance becomes mandatory. There's no room for two adults on the same piece of land. The Himalayas are vast, but food is scarce, and each animal needs to travel tens of kilometers to ensure its sustenance. The snow leopard's offspring are not numerous. It doesn't need to be. Each individual, if it survives its first winter, has a high chance of reaching adulthood. And when that happens, the cycle begins again, silent, solitary, invisible. But not everything in the Himalayas is precipices and icy peaks, because there are other domains, dry, bare expanses where the snow gives way to stone and yellow grasslands. Areas without trees, without shade, without hiding places, where the horizon seems to stretch in all directions. In this open and solitary world lives an animal that doesn't need to disappear because it knows how to become part of the landscape. There the Tibetan fox appears. It neither descends into valleys nor climbs to peaks. It prefers highlands, rugged plains, and rocky fields where the wind whips relentlessly. This environment, which for others is a prison, for him is a refuge. There is less competition, fewer predators, more space to hunt without being hunted, and above all there are small, numerous, and elusive prey. Rodents that require precise, silent, and very patient hunting, a true specialty for this specimen. Of all the species in its genus, the Tibetan fox is an anomaly. It's shorter than its northern relatives and stockier than its southern counterparts. It has a compact body, short legs, and a dense coat that protects it from the cold and high-altitude sun. But what is most striking is his face. Her face doesn't seem designed for charm. There's something disconcerting about its shape, as if the expression has frozen into a mixture of suspicion and emptiness. Her almond-shaped eyes are set in a flat, almost geometric face. Her muzzle is broad, her cheekbones prominent. There is no sweetness or mischief, just a sideways, constant, impenetrable gaze. That strange appearance isn't a whim of evolution. It makes sense. In an environment where there are no trees, where you can't spy through bushes or ambush from above, the Tibetan fox must see everything from below. Its wide face gives it a wider field of vision. Its deep-set, side-facing eyes allow it to detect movement without having to turn its head. And the flattened shape of the snout favors a more direct frontal sense of smell, ideal for picking up fresh tracks on dry terrain. It is, in essence, a face adapted to stalking. It doesn't hunt with the playful cunning of a red fox, nor with the speed of a desert fox. There's no room for racing or games here, as everything comes down to calculation. The most common prey is the pika, a small mammal with rounded ears that moves among the rocks, collecting dry grass and hiding in underground burrows. Hunting it requires more than reflexes. It requires method. The Tibetan fox begins by identifying the active area, a minimal trace of urine or fresh bits of chewed grass. Then it lies down. Sometimes it's for minutes, other times it's for hours. He just watches and waits. The landscape never betrays him. His fur, a mixture of burnt yellow, grey and ochre, blends with the tones of dry grass and earth. From a distance, it is completely indistinguishable from an old rock. Suddenly, the pika pops out. Look, it pops out a few inches, and then pops back in, but the fox doesn't get impatient. His triangular still ears barely vibrate at the sound. Every tiny movement is information. He knows with chilling accuracy whether the pika is near the surface or still inside the tunnel. When the time comes, there is no warning. The fox launches itself sharply and delivers a precise and brief bite, trapping the fox by the neck without generating more tension than necessary. After the hunt, the fox continues its routine without pause or ritual. It often withdraws with its prey in its snout, carries it to a cleft between stones, and feeds leisurely. If the season allows, they may store some of their food in hidden burrows for tougher days. Intelligence isn't just a matter of reflexes, it's knowing when to save and when to spend. The prey they usually capture is small, such as the pika, which provides between 100 and 150 calories, while a Tibetan fox can require around 600 a day in winter. However, that small amount can make the difference between hunting again with energy or failing due to hunger. That's why every move matters. At the harsh heights of the Himalayas, no effort is wasted, no improvisation, mistakes cannot be replaced. Although their diet also includes small rodents, insects, and occasionally carrion, the pika is their preferred prey. Their distribution coincides with that of the fox, and their abundance determines the reproductive rhythm. If pikas are scarce, there will be no offspring that year. That's the fine balance. But the Tibetan fox doesn't rely solely on sense of smell and patience. Its ears are a surgical tool. It can detect the faint rustle of a pika moving underground or the slightest rustle of trampled grass. This sensory refinement isn't shared by all of its relatives. While other foxes use vision as their primary guide, this one hears and smells before seeing. Nor does he need to run, as the landscape doesn't allow it. There are no tunnels to chase, no bushes to evade. So everything depends on a well-aimed first leap. If it fails, the prey flees, and this cunning predator doesn't persist. It simply returns to its vantage point. There is always an opportunity to stalk other burrows, as he knows very well that rodents abound in this place. This is how the Tibetan fox's journey unfolds. Far from being a series of failed attempts, it is a repeated process of contained perfection. He's not a spectacular hunter. He doesn't need to be. His thing is efficiency, permanence, and subtlety. When the sun sets and the wind blows across the plains again, the fox retreats. It leaves no visible trail. It doesn't mark its passage. The prey is gone. The scene no longer exists. Only the certainty remains that in that open, harsh land, there is a hunter who cannot be seen, but who is always there. A body that neither roars nor runs. A silhouette that doesn't stand out, but whose face is impossible to forget, marked by the patience and precision that define its existence. Beyond the plains where the Tibetan fox lurks, snow is no longer enough to explain what is happening here. It's not just the cold. There's something else that transforms those who dare to inhabit this region. The Himalayas are not just a mountain range. They are a machine that carves living forms. At these heights, animals not only survive, they transform. From the Tibetan plateaus to the icy ledges of the Karakoram, bodies conform to an unwritten law. In this region, muscles, bones, and organs have been shaped by forces that elsewhere barely touch the skin. But here sculpt each lifeline with surgical precision. That's why faces are different. Because evolution here doesn't just adapt, it rewrites. Himalayan faces are unlike any other. Their eyes narrow, their noses expand, their cheeks are elongated or flattened depending on the species. Nothing responds to an aesthetic, everything responds to a need. At over 4,000 meters above sea level, the atmosphere offers only 60% of the oxygen available at sea level, and as altitude increases, the proportion decreases even further. For any organism, this lack represents a limit. For species that have inhabited these heights for thousands, perhaps millions of generations, it is an invitation to transform. Larger noses aren't an evolutionary whim, they're compensation chambers. internal structures loaded with folds that warm frigid air before it reaches the lungs. Expanded sinuses allow for retention of every possible oxygen molecule. In some mammals, even the bones of the face are restructured to allow for greater internal space without increasing the external volume of the skull. The eyes narrow. Light, at these heights, reflects violently. The snow acts like a perpetual mirror, and the retina must be protected. That's why the Tibetan fox's eyes are not soft or rounded, but rather slanted and angular, like defensive slits. That's why the snow leopard has a gaze that seems to hide behind a mask of shadows. Blood also changes. The concentration of red blood cells in these species is one of the highest in the animal kingdom, but it's not enough to have more. They must be made better. Hemoglobin becomes thinner, more efficient at capturing oxygen, more resistant to stress and less dependent on heart rate. The heart, for its part, increases in volume, not to generate speed, but to maintain blood pressure under conditions that would crush other species. Even their metabolism becomes a different story. There's no visible fat, but there are hidden reserves beneath their fur. The inner layers of brown fat, which in other animals are only activated in extreme situations, remain active here for much of the year, and that changes not only the weight, but also the behavior. Movements become more calculated, slower, but just as lethal. There's no room for wasted energy. This is why anatomy becomes a map of decisions. The Tibetan fox doesn't need to run like its northern cousins. It needs to stalk unseen, blending into bare terrain and no cover. His face, wide, flat, with erect ears and slanted eyes, is not strange. It is perfect. Every line on his face responds to the need to see more without moving, to hear more without alerting, to smell more without exposing himself. The snow leopard doesn't need to roar, it needs to endure. Its tail, as long as a smoke whip, serves to balance each leap, but also to cover its face when it sleeps in the snow. And they're not alone. The Himalayan ibex has a deeper ribcage than any other goat. Its body is designed to leap without breath, to flee uphill without collapsing. But then the inevitable question arises. Why here? Why in the Himalayas and not in other cold regions like the Arctic or Antarctica? Because in these terrains, the cold isn't the only enemy. The Himalayas combine extreme altitude, brutal temperatures, daily temperature fluctuations of up to 30 degrees, low atmospheric pressure, vertical terrain, and erratic food availability. Together, all these components generate a constant, total, merciless evolutionary pressure. In other environments, adaptation is specific to cold, heat, drought, but here adaptation is complete, and that shapes things. The polar bear, although it lives in lower temperatures, resembles its relatives because it lives at sea level, where pressure and oxygen are the same. The American jaguar and the African leopard share more traits because their environment, although different, does not force a radical anatomical transformation. But in the Himalayas, species don't just survive, they change. They are what the environment allows them to be, or even better, what the environment forces them to be. It's not that the Tibetan fox chose a form, it's that the dry, cold plains carved it out, generation after generation, until it could no longer resemble any of its relatives. It's not that the snow leopard decided to become stealthy and ghostly, it's that the air, the rock, and the cold pushed it into that form with no choice but to adapt or disappear. That's why faces change and bones rearrange themselves, because in this region, where everything is uphill, the path is destiny, and destiny is unforgiving. But not all creatures born in the heights were blessed with the elegance of the snow leopard or the cunning of the Tibetan fox. Some were simply condemned to persist, to occupy a minor corner of the story, to exist outside of splendor. In these lands that reward extreme adaptation with majestic forms, there are also bodies that seem alien, clumsy, incomplete. It seems as if evolution has grown tired halfway through, that it has lost interest. There he is, alone, with an expression that seems like a mistake, Pallas's cat. To speak of this feline is to speak of an anomaly. Its disproportionate face seems not to belong to it. The ears fall to the sides, as if hiding from the world. The eyes are immense, fixed, filled with a disturbing strangeness. The jaw seems tense, caught in a grimace that never changes. There's no sweetness in that expression, nor any fierceness. Just something reminiscent of boredom, and it's not just a matter of appearance. Its skull, measured and studied, presents an unusual architecture among felines. It's wider than it is long, with flattened zygomatic arches and a reduced brain volume compared to other similar species. Its legs, so short that its belly touches the ground when walking, prevent it from jumping or running effectively. In other words, Pallas's cat seems designed not to stand out at all. In any other ecosystem, such an animal would be easy prey, and yet here it is. It doesn't dominate, it doesn't dazzle, but it survives. It inhabits the frozen steppes and rocky areas of Mongolia and parts of the Himalayas. It hides among rocks, under dry bushes, in deep crevices where the sun barely penetrates. Its day begins when the rays already fall on the peaks, but it prefers the dull hours. He does not seek to be seen or confronted, much less by his prey. He doesn't hunt large animals, he can't. His legs aren't in his favor, neither is his compact body. He's neither a swift hunter nor a tireless pursuer. But despite all these anatomical defects, its fur is a work of climatic precision. It has the densest coat of any feline on the planet. Its thickness can exceed 7 centimeters in winter, with up to 9,000 hairs per square centimeter in some areas of the body. This shelter makes it a silent creature, isolated from the wind, invisible against the rocky background. However, this privilege comes at a cost. The heat it retains does not dissipate easily. In summer, they must take refuge in the shade or in underground cavities, as if their own body were an enemy of the weather. Still, there are days when instinct pushes him to try. Crouching among stones, half out of the shadow, his tense body and motionless ears remain in absolute silence. A few meters away, a rodent emerges from its shelter. The Pallas cat's gaze narrows. There is no noise, not a movement the feline calculates. It has done it hundreds of times. It crawls with stealthy clumsiness. A stone comes loose under its paw, a barely audible click, but enough. Its prey turns, freezes for a moment, and in less than a second disappears into the cracks. Pallas's cat doesn't chase him. It has no way to. A useless run would only cost it energy it can't recover. He stands still, his head slightly lowered, as if what weighs him down is not failure, but shame. His expression doesn't change, but the message is clear. That night he probably won't eat. Maybe not tomorrow either. And at these altitudes, a bad day can mean the difference between surviving the winter or not making it at all. But the sun hasn't set yet, and the pikas are abundant. He tries once more. This time the terrain favors him. The wind shifts. The prey appears confident. The jump is short, brutal, clumsy, but effective. The pika doesn't scream, it just disappears. One pika, however, is not enough. An adult needs at least 5 a day to sustain its metabolism in cold weather. The hunt is constant. The prey is minimal. The attrition is enormous. In an ecosystem where other hunters stalk prey weighing tens of kilos, he settles for a bite of just a few calories. His world is one of minutiae, of margins. His life, a constant struggle between instinct and limitation. And perhaps therein lies its silent tragedy. Because if Pallas's cat dreams of being a big cat, if it aspires to an existence that doesn't depend on hunting rats, it will have to conquer a destiny its body can no longer follow. The mountain has shaped him, yes, but not to impose himself. It has left it barely fit to avoid disappearing. In an environment that exalts the adaptable, he is barely tolerated. And yet, he remains. When night falls, he doesn't roar, he doesn't howl, he just hides once again with his stern gaze and his body wrapped in the thickest coat on the planet. He knows he doesn't master these heights, but as long as he keeps breathing in them, he refuses to fall. In other regions of these mountains, fragility has no place. There are creatures that do not live in shadows nor move stealthily. They don't wait for the right moment, they create it. Their presence is imposing, not because of their noise, but because of their weight, because of what they represent. There are bodies that weren't born to be secretive. They impose themselves with mass, with strength, with a presence that's impossible to ignore. It's not a bull, nor a goat, nor a deer. And yet, it has something of all of them. From a distance, his figure is disconcerting. A huge body, covered by a golden cloak that shines even under the dense fog of the forest. He walks with the tranquility of those who need not fear. His gaze is deep, steady, and unsettling. He doesn't seek to provoke, but he does. Because there's something unsettling about him, as if he were a creature lost in time, a living relic of an older, wilder world. The golden takin inhabits the misty slopes of the eastern Himalayas. It moves between cloud forests, misty gorges, and steep slopes covered in slippery moss. He lives where the mud never dries and the air is saturated with moisture. And despite his weight of over 300 kilos, he confidently climbs paths that not even leopards dare to tread. Their day begins with a search for food. They walk in small groups, led by veteran females. The herd moves slowly, unhurriedly, stopping at bushes, bark, and ferns. His diet is not selective, but it is constant. He needs to eat all day long to maintain that giant body. The key to its survival lies in its digestive system, capable of processing tough fibers that other herbivores simply discard. This internal efficiency, however, isn't the only thing that separates it from the rest. But there is another feature that makes the golden takin a biological enigma: its disproportionately long, hanging, monumental nose. It's not a deformity or an aesthetic excess of evolution. It's a structure perfectly designed to warm the frigid air before it reaches the lungs. Inside that large nasal cavity, the air swirls, heats up, and warms the chest. At altitudes where breathing can be painful, this adaptation makes the difference between life and collapse. Its coat also responds to the rigors of these mountains. Its coat, a creamy golden hue with ochre hues, is no mere fluke. Each fiber is coated with an oily secretion that makes it waterproof. Even in the heaviest rain, the water slides off without soaking your skin. It's a protective layer that shelters and defends, like a ceremonial cloak woven by centuries of natural selection. Every aspect of your body responds to a balance between strength and stability. Your body wasn't built for speed or flight, it's built to stand. He doesn't charge with gratuitous ferocity. His defense is different, his mass, his posture, his poise. He stands firm, his chest out, and his gaze is fixed. He needs no more. That look is enough. Few dare to confront him. And although the snow leopard has tried on more than one occasion to take down one of its cubs, it rarely succeeds. An adult take-in is too costly a challenge. During the warmer months, they form herds of up to 40 individuals. This union is no coincidence. In groups, golden take-ins benefit from their numbers. More eyes are alert to danger, more bodies are making their way through the dense undergrowth, and more footprints mark safe routes in the mountains. Heat is also better conserved when bodies huddle together at rest, and young learn by observing adults. Life alone, for a creature of this size, is an unnecessary gamble. At high altitudes, cooperation is an inherent part of survival, but harmony doesn't last all year. When the clouds thicken and the cold hardens, something breaks. The herd disperses. The descent begins. They seek less exposed areas where food is scarce but still accessible. It's no longer a matter of resisting the weather, but of finding enough energy to face it. They don't migrate far, but they do change altitudes following the rhythm imposed by the mountains. Rising when food is available, descending when ice seals the vegetation. This rhythm not only guides their movements, but also marks key moments in their lives. The young are born in late spring when the vegetation begins to renew and the rains have stopped. Only one per litter. From the first day, they stay close to their mother, protected by the close circle of the group. The adult male does not participate in breeding. For much of the year, he remains solitary, traveling great distances. Only during the mating season does he come close, competing with other males for the right to reproduce. The clashes are brief, more demonstrative than violent. Two immense bodies butt heads in a shower of dirt and steam, a ceremony of strength and respect. They do not seek to hurt each other, but rather to establish hierarchies without putting their physical integrity at risk, which is vital for survival and reproduction. Everything is decided in seconds. Whoever gives in steps aside without resentment, and thus the balance in the group is maintained. This balance, vital to survival, is also reflected in its body. The take-in's anatomy is designed for resilience. Its short but muscular legs and broad, rough-edged hooves allow it to grip unstable ground. Its robust and compact spine supports its weight without difficulty, even on steep slopes. And its short, upward-curving horns are not designed to kill, but to warn. It has no direct predators capable of regularly hunting it. Not even humans pursue it persistently. It is difficult to find and even more difficult to kill. But their real enemy isn't a predator, it's isolation. The fragmentation of its habitat, human pressure, and the slow disappearance of the ecological corridors that connected it to other herds. He survives, yes, but increasingly alone. There's something else that needs to be said about the golden takin, something that isn't mentioned in the books. It's an animal that commands silence. You see it, standing there in the mud, its fur shining with an impossible light, its enormous nose breathing in the world, and everything stops. It doesn't move gracefully, it doesn't hunt cunningly, it doesn't sing or glide. But it's there, and that's enough. In these mountains, where everything seems to have been chiseled by wind and stone, the golden takin is a living monument to persistence. It doesn't stand out for its speed or its agility, but for something deeper, a radical loyalty to its land, its climate, its shape. He does not adapt to the world, he forces the world to accept him. And when the thick fog of evening falls and the herds gather by the cliffs, the last thing you see is their golden silhouette crossing the mud, dragging with them a story that time has yet to finish telling. In the wild heights of the Himalayas, where the wind shatters rocks and oxygen is always in short supply, there exists a creature that defies the laws of balance. She is robust, powerful, and moves up almost vertical walls with the confidence of someone born to do the impossible. It's the Himalayan ibex. And seeing it advance along a mountain ledge isn't just a picture of tenacity. It's proof that evolution, when under pressure, can create something more like a miracle than a creature. Its legs, short but disproportionately strong, are designed to support the weight of a massive body on ridges that barely offer room to rest a hoof. Each of those hooves is split, with a rough, grippy surface that fits like a glove into the cracks in the ground. The ibex doesn't walk, it digs in. Its center of gravity is so low, its muscles so well distributed, that it can turn, climb, and stop dead on an inclined plane as if the void around it did not exist. But what most catches your eye at first glance are its horns. Curved backward in a powerful parabola, they impress with their length, which can exceed a meter, and with their rough texture precisely carved by natural selection. These thick, uneven rings aren't there for show or for decoration. Each one marks a year of life and growth, like the rings of a tree. But their relief also serves to dissipate the energy of impacts. When two males collide in a power struggle, these roughnesses act as a friction and absorption surface. They prevent the impact from being transmitted directly to the skull. In other words, they are a protective architecture. And yet the ibex isn't just about strength. There's a peculiar quality to its gaze. Its pupils aren't round or vertical like those of big cats. They're horizontal, elongated like a slit. And that shape has a functional reason of astonishing precision. It allows you to maintain a stable visual horizon even when your body is leaning on steep terrain. This way, the animal can move without losing track of the space around it, detecting any threat or escape route without turning its neck. This ocular design is shared by many mountain ungulates, but in the Himalayan ibex it reaches an adaptive perfection that borders on perfection. Another distinctive feature is the long goatee that hangs from his chin. It's not simply an ornament. Like a lion's mane, this beard can indicate maturity, dominance, or a male's hormonal state. Testosterone stimulates its development, and its size and density can influence social recognition within the group. It is not just a visual mark, it is a living chemical signal. Few species have taken the concept of extreme behavior as far as the Himalayan ibex. It's like a goat on steroids. A herbivore that, due to the brutal terrain, has had to evolve as if its life depended every second on a precise jump, perfect traction, and absolute control of its environment. In another habitat, it would be just another animal. Here, it's a masterpiece of adaptation. One frosty morning, as the sun barely touches the valley's ridges, a snow leopard stalks from a high ledge. He walks silently, his padded paws barely leaving a mark. Look down at a group of ibex grazing among the rocks. He chooses the youngest, the most distracted. He slides down the slope, crouching, and at just the right moment launches his attack. But the group manages to react in time. The dominant male charges without hesitation, intervening with a violent twist. He doesn't seek a fight, but rather a timeout. With a single snort and a devastating leap, the ascent begins. Its hind legs kick out in sequence, and within seconds it is climbing a vertical wall that seems to refuse to be scaled. The muscles in their shoulders expand, their hooves grip invisible protrusions, and every movement is exact, calibrated. The leopard doesn't follow him. He watches him disappear into the air, knowing that this terrain isn't his. The ibex disappears behind a rock, as if absorbed by the mountain itself. And that moment sums it all up. His body isn't made for running on the plains or for fighting in open fields. It's made to merge with the land, to escape to where no one else can follow. Unlike other large herbivores, the ibex doesn't depend on the plains or mass migrations. It prefers to adapt to the rhythm of the terrain. In the warmer months, it descends to valleys where vegetation is more abundant. During the winter, it ascends to slopes where the sun shines directly. It moves between extreme altitudes in a silent back and forth that follows the ice and the sun more than pure instinct. Socially, groups are composed of females, young and a few young males. The more powerful adults often separate themselves or form small groups of males. Hierarchical respect is established through postures, snorts, and controlled attacks. Violence rarely breaks out without warning. In its daily routine, the ibex forages among the sparse vegetation. Lichens, tough grasses, and shoots growing in crevices. Its teeth are capable of crushing tough plant matter, and its digestive system is optimized to extract nutrients even from low-energy foods. But the most fascinating thing about this specimen isn't its diet or its routine, it's its silence. It's its way of inhabiting the inhospitable without challenging it. It doesn't seek to control the mountain, but rather blends in with it. It doesn't defy the elements, it becomes one of them. In a world where many animals have evolved to excel, the Himalayan ibex chose a different path. That of perfect balance between body and environment. Camouflage without surrender, strength without noise, and so, day after day, he continues to write his permanence in stone like a creature that belongs more to the Himalayas than to the earth. In these ancient lands, even the wolf is different, not bigger, not faster, not more muscular, it's something else. The Himalayan wolf doesn't compete with its North American, European, or Asian relatives. It lacks his majesty, nor his colossal jaws. It has something even rarer, a body stripped of all unnecessary things. He has changed everything through resistance and adaptation. At altitudes where oxygen is scarce, the wolf has shaped its body to perform without wasting energy. With a lighter build, slender legs, and a more refined snout, it has reduced the mass that could sap its strength. Their musculature is compact and efficient, designed to conserve energy in a world where breathing is already a struggle. Although their fur isn't as thick as a leopard's, it does its job, protecting them without wasting more energy than necessary. Every detail of its anatomy is the product of an evolution that leaves no room for excess. Their gaze is distrustful. There is no docility or nobility in this animal. It is a resident of harsh environments, one that has had to retreat into smaller packs, not out of temperament, but out of necessity. There isn't enough food here to sustain the large hunting groups typical of other wolves, and yet he hunts, he kills, he holds his own. When he moves, he doesn't do so with the dramatic power of his Canadian or Alaskan relatives. There's no epic here, only persistence. There's economy and calculation in his movements. Every stride saves calories, because everyone counts. Their territory is vast but fragmented. They must navigate between frozen slopes and mountain passes that are only open for a few weeks a year. At a brutal altitude where almost no other large mammal dares to settle, the Tibetan wolf has managed to stake out its territory, and it won't give it up. Takin calf appears unguarded. They stalk, they surround, they attack in the night or at grey dawn when the wind hides their footsteps. The advantage lies in the unexpected. Unlike other wolves, which can wear down their prey in long runs, this one has learned to attack quickly, accurately, without wasting time. You can't risk injury or prolonged failure. Opportunities aren't abundant, and if you fail, you're hungry. It is in this hunger that the Himalayan wolf reveals himself, not as a leader or a warrior, as a beast molded by rigor, crushed by the environment, and still present. There is a sober violence in him, a brutality without spectacle. One moonless night, 3 figures crawl through the snow. There's no howl, no sign, only shadows. High on the hillside, a wild goat sleeps with its babies curled up against its side. The wolves advance, 1 in front, 2 on the sides. There's no room for error. If they fail, the next day will be filled with emptiness, and not everyone manages to survive hunger. But this time, the strategy works. The attack is clean. The pups barely have time to react. And when it's all over, there's no jubilation, only abundant meat and a faint tremor of life escaping through the jaws. The night, for once, belongs to them. Unlike the leopard or the golden eagle, this predator isn't built to amaze, it's built to endure, and perhaps that's its greatest feat, because at the heights only those who waste nothing manage to stay standing. And it is at these same altitudes where even the clouds become scarce, where the light seems to sharpen between the rocks and the wind cuts like glass, something bursts forth with a fragility that unsettles. A black and white flash glides delicately over the abyss, gliding through the unpredictable winds of the Himalayas. It's not a bird, nor a drifting snowflake. It's a butterfly, Parnassus epaphus, a high-altitude species, adapted to survive in extreme conditions of cold and wind. It lives where almost nothing flies. Its habitat extends above 3,500 meters above sea level, in areas where summers are so short they barely last a generation. But she persists. She has been sculpted by a brutal environment, and that has shaped her into something unlike any other of her kind. Its body is compact, covered with scales that display unique patterns of creamy white, black and red spots, and also function as thermal insulation. Its wings, which might appear fragile to the untrained eye, are reinforced with a thicker texture than those of other butterflies, a specific adaptation to withstand the onslaught of cold gusts that could tear it from the air if it had the design of a common species. But her form isn't just about endurance, it's about elegance under pressure. Her flight is low, precise, never erratic. He glides not for pleasure but out of necessity. At these altitudes, every wing beat counts. Every flight from flower to flower is a commitment of energy. This butterfly does not waste nor improvise even in its anatomy. The color of their wings isn't just for show. In the Himalayas, where solar radiation is intense, the light areas reflect some of that energy, while the dark areas, especially at the edges, absorb heat during the brief moments when the sun manages to penetrate the haze. This combination turns its wings into a primitive thermal regulator, allowing it to remain active when many other creatures would have succumbed to the cold. Its life cycle, conditioned by the brutality of the seasons, is equally astonishing. The female lays her eggs on specific plants of the genus Corydalis, which only grow in specific niches of altitude and orientation. The larvae hatch with a cold-adapted metabolism, growing slowly, as if their biology understood that everything in the Himalayas must move with extreme patience. They can enter a state of lethargy if conditions worsen, delaying their development in order to survive. And once they become pupae, some even spend the entire winter in that state, frozen underground, waiting for the thaw. Only then, when the ice retreats and the valleys briefly open to the sun, does the adult emerge. A butterfly that has been developing in the shade for months and has only been able to fly for a few days. And it is there in those few days that the butterfly dances among stones and abysses. It flies low, almost always close to the ground, as if reading the invisible currents between the rocks. Sometimes it lands on a warm rock to absorb heat. Other times it seems to float aimlessly, but that's deceptive. Each movement responds to a precise strategy, avoiding unnecessary energy expenditure, seeking the exact spot where the wind won't carry it away. Even their large compound eyes, adapted for sharp vision in the intense sun, are calibrated for these short, bright days at extreme altitude. As she flies over the dry grass, an unexpected movement forces her to make a sharp turn. A clumsy, shorter figure has tried to catch her. It's a marmot. Its jump is so brief and unsuccessful that the butterfly barely flinches. She disappears among the stones, unharmed, indifferent. The groundhog watches her go with a mixture of annoyance and resignation. It wasn't a serious attack. He wasn't her prey. But she couldn't ignore the possibility either, and unlike the great hunters of the mountain range, the Himalayan marmot does not live to conquer or impress. Its existence isn't defined by individual exploits. It's woven from collective strategies. It doesn't run like the Tibetan fox, nor does it impose like the takin, but survive, and that up here is all that counts. Marmots live on the endless edge of death, in colonies organized with surgical precision, buried beneath soils they know like living maps. Between 2,500 and 5,000 meters above sea level, they disperse along the dry slopes among eroded rocks and grasslands that barely last a few months. Summer is short, and by the time the cold weather sets in, the marmots have already disappeared. They don't migrate, they can't stay awake, they burrow in, literally. Underground, in complex tunnel systems that can exceed 10 meters in length and more than 2 meters deep, they huddle together in common chambers, pressed against each other, sharing heat, reducing their heartbeats to a handful per minute, shutting down their metabolism to the minimum necessary to evade death. Body temperature drops and oxygen consumption adjusts. Hibernation isn't just a pause for these creatures. It's a physiological feat, orchestrated by genetic machinery fine-tuned over thousands of generations. Genes that regulate apoptosis, cell regeneration, and energy efficiency, all this in an animal that can weigh just a few pounds. And when the lethargy ends, nothing is guaranteed, but there is light. The ice gives way. The sun returns, and with it, the possibility of starting over. During the warmer months, their lives are a sprint toward fat. Every outing is a calculated risk. Eagles watch them from above, Tibetan foxes from the crevices. Sometimes even a snow leopard prowls the same valleys. Unlike other small, clumsy or solitary rodents, which easily fall prey to a predator, the marmot is elusive, meticulous and efficient. Its eyes detect movement from a distance. Its ears pick up the slightest rustle in the grass, and above all it relies on the strength of its pack. In every colony there are watchful sentries. When one whistles, everyone freezes. If the danger persists, a second whistle sounds, sharper and faster. And then they all run, not at random. They run to their own burrows, knowing exactly which corner of the terrain they should disappear into, but they are not defined by fear. They are guided by memory, sustained by strategy, and saved by efficiency. A marmot needs to gain enough weight to survive for more than 6 months without eating or moving. That requires between 4 and 6 kilos of stored fat. To achieve this, you must consume hundreds of wild, high-energy plants and select wisely. Not all herbs are created equal, and there's not enough time to make mistakes. Their bodies have been shaped for this race against time. Their fur is thick, almost impervious to wind, with an undercoat that retains heat even when temperatures drop below 20 degrees below zero. Like all rodents, their teeth never stop growing, but their jaws are strong enough to cut through tough roots, fibrous stems, and even thin bark when resources are scarce. They're social, but not chaotic. Each colony has an implicit order. There aren't hierarchies like in a wolf pack, but there are roles. Some guard, others dig. Mothers care for their young in secondary burrows. Males generally become more solitary outside of the mating season, and some become isolated. But everyone understands that the group is the guarantee. Without it, no one survives, and yet, even though it cooperates, has perfected its social architecture, and displays a silent intelligence, the Himalayan marmot remains for many merely prey. One that hisses before dying, one that runs, that trembles, that hides, one that exists only to be eaten by others. But that judgment is unfair, because surviving in the Himalayas isn't the role of a victim. It's confirmation that intelligence can also take unexpected forms, that not every admirable animal has fangs, that the heart of a prey can also beat with the same force as that of a hunter. And then, as the sun sets behind the mountains, that marmot that didn't catch the butterfly returns to its burrow. She's eaten enough, her reserves are almost complete. Winter is approaching, and she's prepared for it too. In the Himalayas, that is the truest victory of all. In the most merciless heights of the Himalayas, where life contracts into precise muscles and death becomes method, a winged shadow reigns, cutting the sky like a blade. There is no error, no mercy, only speed, calculation, and lethal force that descends swiftly from the sky. The peregrine falcon doesn't need to announce its presence. Its flight isn't for display, it's for war. And its entire body has been sculpted by evolution to execute with brutal perfection a single idea: to kill. From its streamlined skull and compact musculature to the curved design of its wings, everything about it is optimized to achieve a feat no other animal can replicate, breaking through the air in a dive that can exceed 300 kilometers per hour. The most striking thing, however, is not in its form, but in its look. The peregrine falcon's completely black pupils are no mere aesthetic coincidence. They are shadow funnels designed to absorb light without losing sharpness in mid-dive. At those speeds, any flash can be fatal. Those abysmal eyes allow him to read the world without interruption, with an optical precision that borders on the impossible. From 1,500 meters away, it can detect prey the size of a sparrow, calculate its trajectory with a brain adapted to process moving geometry, and execute its descent with relentless precision. Its hunting ritual begins in the air. It soars high, oblivious to the noise of the valley, alert to any slight fluttering of wings among the bushes or low rocks. He spots a small bird moving through the scattered bushes. From that height, there's no sound or warning. The falcon retreats and falls. Its descent is a line of pure, contained violence. Instead of impacting from above, it maneuvers past its target and strikes from below and behind, unleashing all its kinetic energy in a single collision that fractures and shatters. The blow does not kill, it immobilizes, and then the unforgivable begins. It doesn't devour its prey instantly. This afternoon, on an icy rock, it holds it with one claw and crushes its head against the ground with the other. The bird, conscious and breathing, trembles under the pressure. He tears off one wing with a sharp movement, then the other. She plucks him slowly, not out of cruelty, but out of strategy. She wants him to stay alive. Her young are about to arrive, and fresh meat weighs more than any warm carrion. The tiny body, now beyond escape, is a mere fragment of what it once was. There is no song, no flight, only a soft silence, interrupted by the labored breathing of its victim. She'll let it die for a few more hours if necessary. That way, when the sun sets behind the snowy peaks, she'll return to the nest, carrying not only food, but also a lesson. Here, you survive by being more ruthless than your surroundings. There is no other creature in the Himalayas that so brutally combines beauty, aerodynamics, and cruelty. The peregrine falcon isn't a bird, it's a living bullet with a brain, a shadow that appears only when it's too late, a perfect killer forged on the edge of the abyss. While he dominates the air with lethal speed in the silent, stony heights, another hunter moves with devastating calm. A snow leopard advances without haste or noise. It doesn't run, it doesn't roar, it just climbs. Behind him, the world dissolves into precipices and wind-torn clouds. Ahead, a barely perceptible sign, a trail that no one else sees. He doesn't know who it belongs to. He doesn't know its face nor its full scent, but he knows the rhythm of its footsteps. The light pressure it leaves in the snow as it walks, a subtle twist of its claws in the print as if it were dancing even as it walked. These are details invisible to anyone else, but this male follows them with the certainty of someone who doesn't seek but recognizes. The mountain greets him without hesitation. His thick fur, adapted to these altitudes, barely manages to stop the icy blast. Every step is a battle for him. The cold isn't felt, it prevails, passing through him without permission. There's no respite here. It's not those who want to survive, but those who refuse to surrender. And this feline insists. As you ascend, the signs become clearer. Scratches on a rock, a faint perfume trapped in the frost. The wind carries it away, but it doesn't erase it completely. Every particle speaks to him, and he listens. Because something in his body tells him it's close. Very close. But he's not the only one. Another male has smelled the same thing. Bigger, stronger, younger. His marks are also on the ice. He's a rival, not by choice, but by nature. Because here up high, only one can stay. There's no room for doubt, not even for two suitors. The meeting is inevitable. The clash has no honor or rules. There is no dance, no warnings, only a sudden explosion of muscle, claws, and fangs. Body against body, weight against stone. One fights to gain, the other to hold on. They wallow on the edge of the abyss, and the snow turns grey. But the younger one gives in, not out of cowardice, but out of instinct. He understands that not every reward justifies a split. He gives one last grunt and disappears into the shadows. The victorious leopard doesn't celebrate because there's no triumph yet, only fatigue. His wounded back breathes with difficulty, but he continues, because the mountain hasn't yet finished demanding everything from him. When he reaches the summit, the landscape opens up like a secret. Everything is covered in a faint, golden blue light. And there, between the folds of rock and frost, the female waits. She doesn't turn around, she doesn't call him, but she has noticed his presence. He knows it too. The wind carries with it the scent of fresh prey, fresh blood, the prize for which she too has fought. But he doesn't look at the meat. He looks at her, and for the first time he sees her. No growls, no dominance marks. They just approach. Their bodies don't collide. They brush. Her tail is entwined with his, long and heavy, like a loose tie. They snuggle together. In that simple, contained, unalterable gesture, the Himalayas grant them a moment of respite. For one night, they are no longer hunters nor ghosts of the ice. And as the snow falls again, gradually covering the tracks they both left, the leopard pair rests. Because sometimes, even here, high above the world, instinct doesn't just seek nourishment. It seeks to endure. Stretching across the towering mountains and valleys of the Himalayas, this vast mountain range, stretching for more than 2,500 kilometers and at latitudes ranging from 26 to 37 degrees north, displays a mosaic of unique ecosystems. From dense temperate forests to frozen tundras that border glaciers, this unforgiving landscape is home to biodiversity that defies all logic and expectation. At these heights, where the air turns thin and the cold penetrates the bone, live creatures such as the snow leopard, which with its distinctive eyes and rudder-like tail defies adversity, the Tibetan fox with its singular anatomy, refined senses and exquisite cunning, the Pallas's cat, small and robust, fighting to survive in a world that seems to have made no concessions to it, the imposing golden take-in with its powerful nose and golden fur that gleams in the weak high-altitude sun, and the Himalayan ibex, a goat on steroids whose claws and horns tell tales of resilience and ancient power. Each of these creatures is a living testament to life's ability to reinvent itself, to adapt to an environment where only the essential endures, where elegance and strength are reinvented under the relentless pressure of cold, altitude, and scarcity. The Himalayas are not just a place on the map, they are a natural monument to resilience, a sanctuary where evolution has designed unique forms and behaviors, unlike anything seen anywhere else on the planet. At these heights, life not only survives, it transforms, is molded, and expresses itself in its purest and most extreme form. And although this journey through its mountains and its inhabitants ends here, the Himalayas remain an open mystery, a constant challenge where life makes its way amidst the harshness, finding unexpected ways to endure and surprise.